Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending this last day of our annual TIEMS conference. May I introduce to you our chairman, Gilles Dussert, and our co-chairwoman, Snezana Knechik. Gilles, the session is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's a great honor to participate on this conference. I would like to thank all the organizers and all the stakeholders of this great conference with a lot of friends. It's my great pleasure also to introduce Desiree Bikari from Australia. Desiree Bikari is TIEMS Regional Director for Australia, New Zealand, and Oceania. Desiree Bikari is the Utilization Program Manager for the Bushfire and Natural Hazard CRC. She remits to ensure that the high-level research which are conducted in consultation with the emergency service sector are in fit for purpose and are adopted by the various emergency service agencies. So, Desiree, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gilles. Good morning, Paris. Good morning, Europe. Good day to the rest of the world. My name is Desiree Bikari, and it is a pleasure to be your keynote address on day 4 of the TIEMS International Virtual Conference. Bonjour Paris, la France et le monde francophone. Bienvenue au jour 4 de la conférence virtuelle de TIEMS International. I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Ghana people and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. When I was a child, around 10 years old, I experienced my first catastrophic natural disaster. It was a class 5 cyclone that devastated the island of Mauritius, l'île Maurice. When the radio announced that the cyclone had reached class 3, there was a bustle of activities at home and around the community. My grandfather and grandmother were busy with their land preparations, and this was not their first rodeo. They tied down everything that could fly off. Animals, outdoor chairs, tables, windows, and non-essential doors were boarded up. Vehicles went into garages. They brought in garden vegetables, water, fuel for cooking, and all those things. I remember my granddad saying, "We should see if any of the neighbors need shelter." And then each one of us went to these families to see whether anyone was in danger or if they needed sheltering, which they did, because we lived in a 2-story solid brick house and had a solid garage and a workshop. Therefore, we could house and shelter some families, which ended up being 4 families, 30 people. Once we were inside and all locked in, it felt like an eternity that we were there. I remember the shadows that were dancing on the walls because of the candles, and it was dark and all boarded, and we didn't know if it was day or night. And all I remember was the fact that it was all the same. Wind was gusting outside, waves of rain, debris hitting the roof, trees battering. When the radio gave the all clear, it seemed to me as a child to be days later. And once the neighbors had gone and my granddad had checked around the house, he said, "Let's get in the car, let's go for a drive. I can't be here anymore." So we did. We went for a drive. It felt like we had cabin fever. There was debris everywhere on the street, everywhere. Trees, glass, corrugated iron roofs, animal carcasses, clothing, sheets, all sorts of things covered the streets and the area. We had the car windows down and we were breathing in all this fresh air. I mean, it was humid, but still it was fresh air. It was better than it was when we were inside. Then I realized that my granddad had stopped the car and was staring at something. And it was some people just standing on this slab of cement. And I just thought, why are they just standing around? It looks like they didn't know where they were. When my eyes finally adjusted, I realized that this slab of concrete used to be somebody's house. The walls, the roof, the windows had been blown away, crushed, gone. What stayed in my mind at the time, and what is still in my mind today, was the look in these people's eyes. Their eyes were glazed over, blank, incapable of accepting, of taking in the reality of what was around them. I'm sure that many of you out there have seen that look in people's faces following a disaster. The look of loss, the look of despair, the look of dismay. I will share my screen now and show you something. And I'd like you to tell me, if you can, you don't need to even tell me actually, I can imagine. I'd like you to say what comes through your mind when you see this photograph. It's a little bit blurred, but you can see this man in the middle there, and he's just standing there. What goes through your mind when you see this picture? Whatever it is that goes through your mind, you would be right, because sometimes you might even be lost for words, because what do you say when you see this around you? Now, the science does not lie. The frequency of natural hazards such as floods, bushfires, droughts, heat waves is growing due to increasing greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We know this, and the science is undeniable. Despite knowing these facts, what are we doing about it? What is within our power? Well, there's a lot that's been done already, such as undertaking high-level participative research in natural hazards. In Australia, the Bushfire Natural Hazards CRC is one of these leading organizations that does such research. And I'm sure all over the world, there are such organizations doing the same things. In addition, there are national and international agreements, policy changes, insurances, forums, trainings, conferences, similar to the one that we're holding here. In the last month alone, and not including the COVID infections and death, there have been at least 10 natural disasters around the world, including floods, landslides, wildfires, heat waves, hurricanes, typhoons, and volcanic activity. Can you imagine that? Do we hear about this every day? And these natural hazards are killing thousands and affecting millions of people. Is that normal? And you would be right, no, it's not normal. Why? Because in everyday terms, when we say normal, we mean that we know what to do. If you look at the definition of normal in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which is in the next slide, one moment. The Merriam-Webster dictionary. I apologize, I'm still trying to bring up the Merriam-Webster dictionary slide where you have the explanation. If you look at this, it tells you what the meaning of normal actually is.
It works again.
Yeah. It tells you that normal is something that is natural, that is something expected, that is something regular, that is something ordinary. And now we use the term new normal. Well, if you look at the Black Summer fires in 2019-2020 here in Australia, let me share some facts with you. 18.6 million hectares were burned. That's an equivalent to 186,000 square miles, 1,000 square kilometers. 5,900 buildings, including 2,779 homes destroyed. At least 34 deaths. Nearly 3 billion terrestrial vertebrates were affected, and some were believed to extinction. Economists estimate that the Australian bushfires may cost over 103 billion Australian dollars in property damage and economic losses, the costliest disaster to date in Australia. Nearly 80% of the Australians were affected. I know I was. Smoke had moved approximately 11,000 kilometers across South Pacific Ocean to Chile and Argentina. NASA estimated 306 million tons of CO2 had been emitted. Which part of these numbers you've just heard sounds like a new normal to you? And let's face it, do we want there to be a new normal? Is this what we want to call business as usual? When we think back at the Japanese 2011 Tohoku earthquake, which ensued a tsunami, followed by the Fukushima nuclear reactor meltdown, do these cascading events count as new normal? Was that business as usual? New normal means that we have the capacity to deal, we know what to do. But do we? In 2006, there were 426 disasters which affected 143 million people, resulting in $35 billion of economic damage. Floods alone increased by 43% compared to the years 2000 to 2004 average. I ask you, is that the new normal? I could go on about the facts and figures, but I would rather look at solutions on what is within our power and our influence. What can we do to minimize the lives lost, the displacements of people, destruction of homes, and the loss of income? Well, when my grandfather saw these families with their homes completely destroyed, people who were in distress, people who were hurt, he said, we should have done more. We should have helped more people. By the next cyclone, we did. We had a collaboration group within our neighborhood. When the warnings advised us to bunker down, each group knew what to do to be safe, to protect themselves. Each group knew how to protect their belongings and their homes. Not just then, even before and in between the cyclones, mitigation activities were taking place and people were doing things. I'm not saying that all houses were protected, no one was hurt, and that there was no damage. But through collaboration within a large group of people in a community, through a series of mitigation exercises, and through the willingness to collaborate, damage and distress was minimized. That was over 30 years ago. This is what we mean by adaptation, reducing an exposure to risk, mitigating the possible effects. A disaster need not end in human catastrophe. Because we are dealing with Donald Rumsfeld's unknown unknowns, the disasters that we don't know about, we must therefore come to terms with the fact that conventional disaster responses to predict and provide is no longer adequate. We need to adapt, but it's not normal. There is no new normal in climate change, just change. What I would like to encourage for us is collaboration. Just like TIEMS is a collaborative group internationally, our greatest ability as human beings is that we can talk. If we can talk, we can collaborate within communities, amongst local governments, through a network of resource sharing. Why? Because the climate change will affect millions more people and cause devastating consequences. This will mean a monster effort and need for humanitarian assistance. There'll be shortages of food and water supplies. People's health, safety, and economic stability will suffer as countries fight for resources. And let us not forget that while all countries will suffer, countries that contribute the most for causing global warming will not be the countries suffering the most. We need to adapt to the reality of the climate, empower ourselves and our community. The Australian State of the Climate 2020 report shows that continued warming trends in Australia were contributing to increases in extreme fire weather and the length of the fire season, even leading to an earlier start of the fire season. Climate change is influencing trends through its impact on temperature, rainfall, relative humidity, and resulting in change to the fuel moisture content. The report also notes that changing rainfall pattern being observed in the north and south of Australia. These trends project more spent in drought in coming decades. These impacts not only affect land, but also oceans, which means significant impacts on marine ecosystems around Australia. I don't know about you, but it's got me worried thinking about all that. I live in South Australia, Adelaide. Earlier in January of 2020, I remember waking up in the middle of the night in a panic at the smell of burning in my nostrils and the taste of ash. I woke my husband and our son thinking the neighbor's house was on fire, but no. When we went to the street, we saw there were a number of our neighbors outside also. And what we learned from the radio, which we were tuning into because of this, was that Kangaroo Island had had fires that were so bad, the winds that were so strong that we in Adelaide, over 250 kilometers away, were getting smoke and ash. Again, we made sure that the people in the street were looked after, the elderly, the people with breathing difficulties, they went inside, that they would call if there were any problems. It was not normal for smoke and ash from Kangaroo Island to drift to Adelaide and beyond. It was not a new normal to wake up in the middle of the night with the smell of fire and the taste of ash in a fire that was happening over 200 kilometers away. Normal is being recreated every day. Normal is the power of speech. To keep collaborating, to keep looking for new ways to be connected and be resilient, to be prepared, ready to act. When the fires that raged through Australia in the last season, in what we call the Black Summer fires, it is clear that activities such as fuel reduction, emergency warnings, firefighting resources were part of a large jigsaw to reduce the severity of the fire. However, none of these activities make any difference when the fire is weather driven. We cannot control the weather. We cannot control the hazard. We cannot control the strength, the severity, and the frequency of the occurrence. What we can do, though, is influence how much it impacts us, our lives, and our community. What we can influence is our ability to connect, to talk, to collaborate with one another, to get better at collaborating, to adapt to the new ever-changing increase in natural hazards. Looking back at this photograph, I would like to tell you that this presentation is not about the drama of disasters. This is my challenge to you as professionals, as neighbors, as people, parents, as brothers and sisters, to be more effective with less, to use the power of speech when the environment is volatile and when uncertainty rules. Thank you. If I have a few minutes, I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Desiree. I would like to maybe group all the questions at the end of the session, maybe at 10 a.m. And would you please keep all your questions? Then we can share all the questions to all the speakers. And therefore, if you agree, let's speak now with Renifer Madondo, and let's keep the question after the presentation of Snežana Knesić. Do you agree, Desiree?
When did you say to leave the presentation?
10 a.m. Sorry, at 11.
At 11?
Yeah. We will keep the question at this time after the presentation from Renifer Snežana Knesić. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I will leave the floor to Renifer Madondo. Renifer, it's up to you. Thank you, Desiree.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Hi, it's Roman here. I'm gonna speak. Hi, it's Roman here from South Africa. Renifer is a student of mine. She's currently preoccupied and can't present today, so I'm gonna present on her behalf. I am a co-author on the paper that you can find in the proceedings. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. So the paper that you're going to hear about today is part of Renifa's master's project that she's working on at Rhodes University in South Africa. It is part of a similar study than what we heard in the plenary from Desiree. It deals with fire management in Southern Africa and specifically in the southeastern part of South Africa, where we are based. Um, what I'm going to talk about is the general trends in certain types of fire impacts that we have seen in our local municipality and in the province where I'm based, which is the Eastern Cape. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what is the largest context of the project and what are the future trends and activities we'll be working in. So South Africa is a semi-peripheral country at the southern tip of the African continent, which means that it's neither part of the developed or part of the developing world. And this leaves it vulnerable to certain impacts of the overall global ecosystem, should we say, both on the economic and also on the disaster front. Many actions that the government has to take is in response to factors such as climate change, but also factors such as the overall economy globally, and the government doesn't exactly have 100% control over it. When it comes to the profile of disasters in the country, there are earthquakes, which are quite uncommon, but you can find them in the southwestern parts near Cape Town. Thunderstorms are very common. And then over the past 5 years, one of the things that has been mostly telling us that we need to rethink everything from scratch basically is drought, which has been ongoing and has been caused by the El Nino effect. One of the reasons why the drought is so important is because it changes the way that, for example, we approach access to resources, drinking water, but also access to resources that are important to fighting fires. In addition to this, many things that drive migration of the population inside the country due to economic factors and so on are still based on large economic and historical inequalities due to what happened during the apartheid regime and colonialism before that. And approaches that we are looking at, which is the fire management in this case, need to be adapted to these new realities. So I'm pretty sure many of you are familiar with this, the fire triangle. The reason why I'm putting it up is that these are the three components that you need to start a fire disaster when the fire bursts uncontrollably. The one thing that is important is that, as it was already mentioned by the plenary speaker, we cannot control many factors in disaster management these days, or disaster risk management, one of them being the heat source. Many times ignitions of fires are caused by factors such as climate change, and it is not in our power to do much about controlling that. Besides policies and so on, but those are long-term considerations. What we can, however, do is, and these are one of the strategies that are used, especially under drought conditions, is fuel management. So making sure that fire management takes into account the status of the vegetation and minimizes the impact that fires could have as much as possible. In order to do this, however, we need to get a good understanding about what the fuels are that drive our fires and what are the vulnerabilities or situation when assets, lifelines, and populations are put in a position where they could be affected by fires. So as part of the review, we have looked at data on the impacts that fire disasters have had in South Africa, mostly for the period between 2003 and 2015. As you can see, there are the y-axis that you see here are billions of rands, South African currency as impact. As you can see, as a function of the year. So these are the total financial losses that have been occurring in South Africa due to fire disasters in the last 20 years or so. As you can see, there's a spike in 2003 when the impact was massive, but for the most part, the financial impact has remained relatively stable, somewhere between 2 and 3 billion rand. To put this into perspective, this is in the order of 3 billion rand would be about 150 million euros. On the other hand, when you look at the impact by sector, the financial losses were mainly suffered by the industrial sector. These are explosions in pharmaceutical factories and so on, and also mine-related fires, which have been which account for quite a large part of the GDP. Death by sector is where the historical vulnerabilities and the disproportionate impact on the low socioeconomic segments of society become apparent. As you can see, on the y-axis is the type of impact or where the death actually occurred, and then on the x-axis you see the total deaths. It is clear that for the 3 years that are listed, 2003, 2009, and 2015, majority of the deaths still occur in informal dwellings. We are talking about urban and peri-urban slums, which are quite common throughout the world. In Southern Africa, they are important because many of the migrant laborers and also refugees, for example, from countries like Zimbabwe, often do enter South Africa and settle or enter the economic hubs of the country and settle in these settlements. And as you can see, the death burden makes them prime target for fire disasters, but also makes them prime target for the interventions that we need to put in place to decrease the impact of fire in the matter of preparedness and mitigation. So fighting fires is a complex chemical and disaster management endeavor, but for the most part, it is still quite closely linked to the access to water resources. And especially in drought, considerations like these are important because if you don't have access to water, many of the fires, especially the ones that are impacting informal settlements, you will not be able to do much about it. So when you look at the this graph, it portrays on the x-axis the time period between 2003 and 2015, and on the x-axis it presents the percentage of households which have access to piped water or tap water, which means that this is either a yard tap in a community or piped water inside the dwelling. So over the last 15 years, or in the period depicted, there has been much increase in the access to piped water. So now over 90% of the population has access to the water. This water, however, has serious problems. And the problems are that even though the taps are available, there are often interruptions due to corruption and breakdown in municipal services. This is often due to lack of technical skills and so on. So that means this is a potential vulnerability and a hazard or a secondary cascading effect if you're fighting a fire and the water is not available. Second thing that is a problem is that many times the infrastructure, even if the water is there, the infrastructure can be broken down so that you can't actually access the water at the site where you need it. And thirdly, and most of the research that I have done over the last decade has been on the fact that much of the water that even though it is available, it doesn't mean public health standards. For example, it is often contaminated with fecal matter, and this again poses additional risks to the fire fighters and also to disaster management structures. Now, number of fires in informal settlements, as you can see, this is the breakdown on the y-axis. You see the source of the fire in an informal settlement that has triggered a disaster. This is generally based on the same standards as CRET or the EMDAT database in Belgium. As you can see, open fires are a big contributor to the deaths and to impacts of fire disasters in informal settlements. Electrical fires are very problematic because much of the electrification of the country is still done through illegal connections, which are not either grounded or housed in casings. So that means fires, especially in winter months, which we have just come out of, are a problem. And secondly, thirdly, as you can see on top, the second item, a lot of the sources of fires are undetermined. And this is a problem as we are still requiring more research to investigate what these fires actually are caused by. So future endeavors, we are trying to evaluate efficiency of awareness campaigns which have been run in the country over the past 25 years. This is due to the fact that compared to other types of disasters, fire disaster management is relatively well legislated. structured and also executed in pretty much local, provincial, and national level of government. At the same time, we're looking at localizing firefighting using scrap materials such as waste management. So what are the uses of materials such as byproducts of burning coal that we could use to contain fires, for example, during transport accidents? And then how are the fires being managed under drought conditions? To do this, we are currently modeling the possibility of using rainwater harvesting or borehole water, which are quite widespread in our area, as a potential source of establishing localized, reliable sources of firefighting supplies such as water. And then the last point, which will be a long-term problem, will be to investigate if the water quality has any impact on waterborne diseases in connection with firefighting. And with that, I conclude my talk. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them. And thank you very much for listening and the opportunity to present.
Thank you again. Thank you, Roman. As I propose to Desiree, Roman, if you agree, we are going to merge all the questions to let the floor to Snezhana. And we are going to hear Snezhana first and wait for potential question after the last presentation. And we are going to group all the questions if you want.
Yeah,
okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Snezhana, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Gilles. I will try to share my screen, but in advance, I would like to apologize because my neighbors decided to refurbish their bathroom. And if you hear some noises unexpectedly, they are them, they have permission, so nothing to do about this. So sorry about that, but working from home is a challenging, of course, always. Shall I PowerPoint session here, share? Yeah, I do believe that you can, how to go, yeah. Is it work? Does it work? Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I think we see your screen. Yes, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. Here it is. This presentation is about our research we did as a part of a DG ECO project, Network for European Hubs for Civil Protection and Crisis Management. And this part is dedicated to analysis of wildfire response governance in Europe. And the whole project is reachable, the whole publication of the project on the link you can see on the screen. Yes, the objective of this particular research was to determine the status regarding the use of Union civil protection mechanism in Europe. I will tell a bit in a minute, and to find potential challenging points and improvements. Particularly, the mechanism is working, but nevertheless, there are always some challenges and places and points where we can improve it, particularly in terms of interoperability, which is still a very, very challenging issue. Well, how we did this? Well, it's like a desktop research, and we did interviews with selected experts who were experienced in acting either as incoming or hosting organization during the activation of this European mechanism. It was focused primarily, as I said, to identifying the level of mutual understanding and interoperability, which is a real issue during the joint response operations in Europe. And yes, what is this Union Civil Protection Mechanism for those that are not coming from European Union? It is alive since 2001, and it's a very useful and active mechanism because it was activated more than 330 times in the whole period, actually, to respond to emergencies. The mechanism gathers all EU member states, 27 countries, plus 6 participating states, from Europe mainly, and now UK because they're outside the European Union. So besides those countries which through this mechanism helping each other during any kind of disasters, not only wildfires, the mechanism can also be deployed inside and outside EU, of course, and around the world, which is quite important. There is also a rescEU reserve capacity. It's a kind of a pool where countries from the mechanism put their resources available for all countries within the mechanism. And for the wildfires, there are already, I think, 6 helicopters from Sweden and from several countries like 12 or 13 airplanes already in the pool, and they can be revoked anytime by any countries that need it. And on this slide, on this picture on the right of this slide, you can see the activation of UCPM regarding wildfires, the most from Greece, expectedly Portugal, Italy. Those countries are mostly affected by wildfires. Okay, what we did, what are the main topics we reviewed during this research? It's kind of a forms of actual cooperation during the big wildfire events across Europe. Types of firefighting modules deployed. There are 2 types, main 2 types. It's aerial and ground firefighting modules in case of activation of this European mechanism. Efficiency and logistics on site during deployment, which is always challenging when 2 different or several different countries meet at the same place and need to cooperate, collaborate, and share their resources, and further understandings of the gaps concerning operational needs. So basically we gave recommendations which we passed to the European Commission, and then hopefully they will analyze this and try to improve the mechanism. So what kind of events and what kind of experts we invited to join us in this research? So we set up several criteria. Firstly, we focused on the long-lasting wildfires, mega fires, really big fires, big events that have had high impact on humans, economy, and environment. Then, yes, basically the wildfires which involved this European assistance, which actually works through Emergency Response Coordination Center in Brussels. So each country sent a request for assistance through this coordination center, and then other countries are called and they provide their resources and help to the host country. Then we tried to be representative geographically. So across Europe, recently, unfortunately, we had a very big fire in Sweden, just amazingly, because due to climate change, I suppose. So we include also experts who were involved in this big event, not just on the Mediterranean countries. Yeah, so we tried to include all range of natural landscapes, Mediterranean, mountains, alpine, whatever. So to be really to include all types of wildfires and landscapes and geographically different places, and to go to most recent cases like 7 or mostly 10 years, because the UCPM policies were used there and they were developing through the time. So all recent policies were examined. Okay, and of course, we need to have both aerial and ground firefighting modules presented in those events. So let's see the methodology. Yeah, just to be short, so we took all knowledge acquisition campaign where wildfire response operation held within the UCPM context, those was fire in Sweden, Greece, Portugal, Cyprus, Chile, because the help was sent also there, Bolivia and Croatia. The experts were approached to, I did actually, and my colleague Georgios from Greece, we did those interviews through personal and professional contacts. Really, we talked to the experts. It was a semi-structured way of doing interviews. We sent them questions, and then we talked about those questions. It was not just their answers. We really went through the issues. So the content of a questionnaire was like this. We focus on 3 main topics. Firstly, logistics for response capacity, and then we divided it into deployment of maintenance of equipment, deployment and maintenance, of the equipment, provision of facilities, governance of logistics activities. So what are the issues there? Are there any gaps? How it went? Did it go well or not during these big fires, of course, across Europe and in Chile and Bolivia? Then we focus on interoperability, the main issue, the main challenge, I can say, in the mechanism. And we focus on technical interoperability, interoperability from also from organizational perspectives, because both of them are very, very important. Probably a little bit important is from organizational perspective, but I will tell a little bit later about this. And safety measures for firefighters, not for population, but for firefighters, because different countries gather and try to fight the fire, and there should be a certain level of safety there and safety standards. And we just try to find out whether there were some kind of problems or gaps or issues regarding the safety measures. So I will just go through 3 slides from our recommendations based on our findings during the interviews. So first recommendations go to logistics. So what we found out is that probably more formalized procedures in the context of, for example, rescEU. This is the pool of resources shared automatically by countries, should be in place, because the formalization brings certainty to host countries and to incoming countries, and the kind of centralized monitoring systems from Brussels, which is always something that people do not like when you say centralized monitoring system from Brussels. But nevertheless, it will be, for example, easier to that mechanism provides kind of apps or mobile phones when firefighters incoming, those who are coming to endangered country, can get their money claims there immediately. So they have their mobile phones, which are on a cost of common cost of all mechanism countries. So some more logistics could be in place there. So the firefighters could be safe that their effort is heard, their effort is channelized towards the main goal. So also the improvement of equipment's transportation. Within the EU, the EU is custom-free zone, but if you go outside the EU to countries which are within the mechanism but not in a custom-free zone, your equipment may stuck on a custom, particularly if you go outside outside Europe in Latin America, for example. And the funny story is that during what we heard from experts is that firefighters from France who went to Sweden to help them they had trouble getting flight tickets because it was during the summer season, and commercial flights, they were using commercial flights. The planes were fully booked because it's a summer. The people from Sweden goes to France for summer. So those are those things that should be improved. Then use this cross-border deployment facilitation, because the countries which share borders, they all already have kind of bilateral agreements for helping during the emergency, particularly wildfires, forest fires, and we can use this and improve and bring to mechanism, because something is already there historically, so it's a good thing. And we should think about expected large fires in the future due to climate change, and focus our logistics towards this, which may, hopefully it won't happen, but it may happen in the future. So interoperability, this is a really, really interesting topic. Yes, what we find out as recommendations after thought and studied all results from interviews is that the mechanism should highlight the role of national disaster management authorities to prepare them to accept the other countries which are coming and other firefighters which are coming to help them. Then there is some failures in compatibility and interoperability with equipment. The story goes that fire hose from Polish firefighters, when they came to Sweden, they did not fit the hose of Swedish equipment. So kind of a common database of shared equipment we should use. And more emphasis to put on organizational interoperability about standard operating procedures, common command and control systems. There should be something on the top, because we have countries with developed firefighting systems, so they do not want to change, which is normal and natural, but still we need kind of a common structure above this, so we can plug easily to each other's systems and to be more interoperable. So to achieve this, we propose more joint training and operational procedure, joint operational procedure and training towards this, like firefighting expert exchange program. So firefighters from Italy knows the system in Sweden because they spend time there. So when they go to Sweden, they can be more prepared what they are going to find there, and vice versa, whatever. And yes, to more exploit some existing structures within European Union, those are platforms related to firefighting. And finally, safety measures. Actually, they were managed properly, although some countries which are not used to wildfires may have some, let's say, lack in their safety issues regarding these big events. For example, when airplanes drop these water bombs on the ground, so you have to keep alert the ground firefighters to be alerted that something is coming from above, and it may hurt them. And having both helicopters and airplanes at the same time in air is a not good idea, and so on and so on. And also improved communication components to support safety of personnel should be, but this is also related to interoperability. For example, firefighters mostly rely on a TETRA system and all emergency teams on TETRA system, and in each country TETRA system is different, so they're working on different wavelength, and this could be a problem the European Union is trying to find a solution for. Yes, and enhance the quality of equipment, of personal protective equipment, and reinforce the safety, of course, to try to find the common standards on the safety. Well, I think I fit into 20 minutes, so this is all from
Thank you, Snezana. Thank you again. Now it's time for the questions. I would like to maybe to open the microphone to the audience. I don't know how we can handle that, but anyway, let's wait the first question. That is maybe the most difficult one, but let's wait the first question to all three very good speakers.
You have questions in the QA, Jill? 2 questions already.
Yes, Snezana, you've got a question for my friend Sébastien Laillé that he's asking, where can we find the publication from your presentation related to the project?
Yeah, I can share the link I just prepared, but I think it's just to panelists. I don't know who can see the link and get it. I just shared the link. I prepared the link because I was prepared to this question. So I just put it.
I think it's on, but anyway, in case of any issue, Sebastian, you can contact Snezana or you can contact me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and there will be a proceedings with all presentation after the conference will. It will take us several days to prepare it, and it will be publicly reachable somewhere on the TIEMS website, and I guess on our French organizer website. So all attendees and participants of the conference will be informed about this, and they can download all presentations and abstracts and full papers from the conference.
Is there any other questions or remark or suggestion?
There is a hand rising in the middle. You can see Chedras. Oh, it's hard for me to pronounce. Yeah.
Yes. May I, Chairman? May I ask?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay, I listened to expert. Thank you so much. You're talking about Wi-Fi in different countries, but for us, SERDAP, we are from Asia, and if we look from the satellite, we will see many spots of fire everywhere in this region. And when we look at them, many of them not caused by natural event. So most of them are from people, and also agriculture practice. There are many of them. And there are alternatives, no alternatives for get rid of after post-harvest. So the easiest way is to burn agriculture. Sometimes it's in Thailand, for example, in the north, the firefighter told me that more than 70–80% are from arsonists. So I think that this is some kind of a difficult situation and create a PM 2.5 everywhere in this country. How do you think, what shall we do about this in terms of technology, in terms of how we are going to monitoring, control, surveillance, and be able to manage this on the ground, because there are so many of them. You look from the satellite, they all spot everywhere. Yeah. In India, in Bangladesh, in Thailand, in many countries, Cambodia, for example. Yeah. So how are we going to manage this? Please suggest something. Thank you.
I'm not that kind of expert anyway, but what I know, across Europe there are monitoring systems with the smart cameras, and this is so to detect as early as possible, because you can't, you can educate people, of course, but there are also ill people. I know I'm from Croatia. We are a wildfire prone country during the summertime, but there are plenty of people who set up fire because they are ill. They have this internal urge to set a fire. And even this summer, 2 of them were caught setting setting the fires. So I don't know, but early detection and early warning is the only instrument to fight this situation. This is from my experience, because I'm coming from university, but talking with practitioners, this is the only way to cope with this.
Thank you. Australia, you have experience? Roman?
Roman is from South Africa, I think.
Ah, from South Africa. Yes, okay.
Yes,
Fine.
thank you. That's a good point. Okay, so going back to the point that Snezhana made about educating people. I think one of the things that's gonna be the most challenging thing in climate change, and I'm not the first one to say this, and I'm not gonna be the last one, is you need to shift the way that humans live. And that on its own, one of the first things that we will have to look at is food production, because one of the things that food production and empowerment of lower income segments of the population to fit into that paradigm, because you can have there's a lot of academic research, especially in South Africa, and I think Southern Hemisphere in general, that you can empower people in new techniques, and many times they take it up, but it needs to be going from the subsistence to the commercial scale, so that you do not just create food supply, but you lift people out of poverty. And for that to happen, you're going to have to start shifting things from for example, grazing cattle, which is going to be a massive problem in Africa, to something like eating worms and farming things like insects, because that is something that you can do in high densities in a small area. One of the things that, so just to close for that, I think education and changing food systems will be a large portion of it in connection with everything else that needs to be done. But the one thing that I would also like to stress is that currently one of the systems that seems to be emerging in many countries as one of the self-contained and also water-friendly and low carbon emissions seems to be aquaculture, where you can basically set up a system at the back of your house, and you can then have a pond that grows fish, and that water is then recycled into a greenhouse that pretty much closes the loop of the basic nutrients that you need. Okay, thank you. I would leave it there.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question to Desiree. What was the cause of this Australia mega fire, actually?
It was extreme temperatures. We had extreme temperatures beforehand with the major heat waves, and really, it was just hot. It was extreme temperatures.
Just extreme temperatures set to fire, or was it some additional trigger? This is, yeah, but okay.
Well, I don't have this data, and I can get it because the it depends where. But we did the fires. Before the fires, we did have a period of very, very high temperature. We had droughts, and we had very little rain. So the fuel load was there.
Okay.
So, and it could have been ignited by very different things, thunderstorms in different areas. But before the fires, it was hot everywhere and dry. Hot and dry for a long period and very little rain. So we were just ready to just literally be lit up, and we did.
So thank you all. In order to keep the agenda on time, I would like to say again, congratulations and thank you for all the three first speakers. It was really, really fantastic. It was relevant. It was straight to the point. Congratulations. It was really, really, really interesting. Congratulations again to the three first speakers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In order to be on time, I would like to pass the microphone virtually to Mr. Chadzak Virapat. Chadzak, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman, Mr. Dreja, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to show you the PowerPoint now. My topic will be on adaptive management on earthquake and natural disaster management for community awareness and resilience in Chittagong City, Bangladesh. This map showing the Chittagong location. As you know, Chittagong is a port city of Bangladesh, and it's a major coastal city with the financial center. The city has population of about 8.4 million in 2016. So it is the largest, second largest city in country after Dhaka. The Chittagong city is also the major urban area, experiencing the physical vulnerability like with informal or unplanned settlements. And if a strong earthquake hit the Chittagong city, it may result in damages and destruction of many buildings, and it may impact for the entire country. The Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology carried out the HASUS analysis to estimate the number of people that will be injured and killed by the earthquake. The casualties are broken down in 4 levels. The level 1, injured with require medical attention, but hospitalization is not needed. The second level, injuries will require hospitalization but are not considered life-threatening. Level 3, injuries will require hospitalization and can become life-threatening if not promptly treated. And the level 4, the maximum one, victims are killed by the earthquake. So we plan to carry out this using the scenario are 2 times. One in the early morning, 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And the time represents the period of the day that different sector of community are on their different activities. At the 2 a.m., we consider that residential occupancy load is maximum because they are in-house, is early morning, so they are sleeping mainly. And 2 p.m. afternoon, we consider that the education, commercial, industrial sector will have a maximum impact because they are at their place. This table showing social impact due to earthquake. So we consider the severity level number 4. Victims are killed by the earthquake. So at 2 a.m., the casualties are found in residential, family, industrial, commercial, hotel. They are sleeping, so they are killed at this time. And whereas at 2 p.m., the casualty found in commercial, residential, single, family, industrial, education, and hotel, respectively. So this information provides basis for further planning on future disaster risk reduction in the Chittagong city. Center on Integrated Rural Development for Asia Pacific, or CERDAP, in collaboration with BUET, will co-organize stakeholder consultation meetings to plan for selecting pilot villages, school-based areas to conduct adaptive management on multi-hazard disaster management preparedness and response, and the process, including the selection of the village and school that are in the high-risk area, establishment of a committee on planning and management, planning meeting at this village and schools, development of multi-hazard mitigation preparedness and response plans by villages and schools, evaluation of the plans, and conduct the full-scale exercise to test their plans. The consortium will provide them with the scientific data and information, as well as tools such as maps for them to plan in these processes. And the scientific information and tools can be integrated with local knowledge to formulate the adaptive management plans. And the final meeting will be organized to evaluate the plans. And this plan can be used for future mitigation preparedness response in other disaster as well. And this plan can be applied with other village and school in other affected area. And the project strategy to utilize schools as a community learning center and to promote community participation in data collection and planning for disaster early warning preparedness and response. This map showing the location of schools, communities that will be selected for this project. It is expected that about 2,000 school children, 200 teachers, 100 community leaders will engage in these consultation meetings to plan and to conduct adaptive management, preparedness and response. And they will be able to generate their local operational plans for earthquake management preparedness response, which can mitigate impact of life and property of their schools and communities. Lastly, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Professor Mehedi Ansari Abuet, who provided detailed information on the scenario used for this. And I also would like to acknowledge gratitude to Dr. Manop Sittidet, Minister Councillor of the Office of Science and Technology of Thailand in Brussels, and to the President of TIEMS, Mr. Harel Drescher, for their kind supports. Thank you very much. I finished my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shadzak Virapat, and thank you for this presentation again. Such as we did previously, I would suggest, if you agree, to merge all the questions after the three speaks, and therefore, if you agree, we are going to hear Mr. Jin Yan. I don't know if I saw him. Snezhana, could you confirm that?
I was also looking. I thought you knew that he won't.
Vittorio, sei sicuro che forse vai a essere tu?
Forse. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Se c'è un problema con l'altro cinese, andiamo a partire con te.
Okay.
So let's wait few seconds about Mr. Jin Yan in order to be sure.
Jill, somebody from Resilience France, can tell us whether the person was online, offline, because I do not have all control.
Yeah, we are looking for him.
The person is there, but you cannot see him or her, or I don't know.
By the way, there are two questions for Roman Tandlish. Roman, are you still here? I think so.
Yeah.
Roman? Roman? Would you please open your microphone, maybe, if you agree?
He left probably.
He left probably. So I asked him via email to answer to the question from Mr. or Madam Prasad, Mr. Prasad Bandari and Madam maybe Mothemba Maba. And there are two questions that were concerning how the households' access to pipe water went down after 2012. And the second question, do you have any recommendations, even if it's not sustainable, dealing with fire in forms? So therefore, those two questions have been sent to Roman, and if you send an email maybe to him or to the teams, they are going to be forwarded to my friend Roman. And
I'll send him a WhatsApp message so we can move forward, and then when he comes back, he can answer the question.
I think so.
I will send him a WhatsApp.
Good idea, Snezhana. So by the way, meantime, if we don't have confirmation from Jin Yan, I would like to hear if you agree. If we all agree, we are going to hear Vittorio in order to save time and maybe provide some potential time for Jin Yan to join the meeting. Okay, so let's start first by Vittorio. Vittorio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gilles. Good morning to everyone. I'm speaking from Rome. It's a almost nice day, you know, despite the pandemic, you know, we are still in good health, hopefully. So I will, so my talk will be essentially a technological talk because I'm a researcher. So I have three different hats. That of Enea, which is the Italian, one of the major Italian research institutes. We are committed in technology, particularly in the area of the energy sector. I'm also a member of this newcomer European Infrastructure Simulation and Analysis Center. I will be talking about just at the end of my presentation, and then I'm a member of the Italian chapter of TIEMS. So the title and the concern of my talk will be how to do for enhancing resilience against natural events through ordinary time strategies. Our major commitment is in the area of critical infrastructure protection, which are important assets, you know, for providing citizen normal and important services, and of course are of major concern when some emergency occurs. And so also at the level of rescue teams, civil protection and emergency management, the fate of the critical infrastructure, and so the availability of primary services in the area which has been hit and shut by some dramatic event is really important. So what we have done in the last 10 years is also understanding, which is the problem of dealing with critical infrastructures, and so which is the best way for enhancing their resilience. That means their capacity, their capability of bouncing back, you know, from some perturbation, even from if they are hit from a very strong perturbation. And we have assessed that the best way of dealing with this problem and achieving this result is to act during ordinary times. So in many cases, of course, we are very good and in dealing with emergencies, so we are really reactive. But the best way of improving resilience is just acting during ordinary times. So we will see how we cast all we have understood during the last 10 years, and what has been understood by the scientific and technological community. So everything has been casted into a very complex technological tool, which is called CIPCAST, which is a decision support system which provides an operational support for critical infrastructure and also territorial protection. So operational means that it acts 24/7. So it's constantly acting, providing information and support on the analysis of risk of area, and particularly of the asset, the strategic asset which is contained. And then I will call the ASEC initiative, which is essentially the way in which we want to bring in the market this type of technology and this type of services that I will be talking in my talk. So critical infrastructure, as I told, are relevant assets. They produce primary services, are vital for citizens. The failure, particularly in cases of crisis during to natural hazard, but also for events which are caused by man, can of course endanger citizen life. So the major problem of infrastructure is that they are massively interdependent in the sense that they can propagate services, but also perturbation. So you may have a cascading effect related to the passage of a perturbation from a system to another. So resilience, it's a very important property because it is adaptive and it allows systems to withstand perturbation and recover their equilibrium states. So instead of a sort of an impossible level of invulnerability that of course we cannot provide to our asset, critical infrastructure should be endowed by resilience. So resilience is an ability of, as I told you, a system which may be also extended to community or society, but we will mainly talk about resilience in technological system. It's this way that the system has to accommodate and recover from some strong perturbation. So you see here is a very sketchy image of what we intend when a system is currently running constantly. Then at a certain time you have a perturbation, you have a strong, more or less strong degradation of its performance, and then of course also due to the action put in set in place for the emergency management, the system is restored and then it regains its equilibrium configuration. So this area A in which you have a lack or even a total loss of the service, it's something that should be minimized. So the resilience of our system is essentially related to the inverse of this area. So smaller is this area, larger is the resilience of our system. So this is the same as before. You see here the point of shock, and we know that the slope of the minimum depends strongly on the preparedness action we set in place, because either the slope and also the absolute value of the minimum depends essentially on the time that we had of preparing ourselves to this event, to this shock, and also the type of measure that we could perform in a way to reduce as much as possible the level of the minimum level to which the system could be brought. And but also the ascent depends not only by our capability in emergency management, but also depend on preparedness, because of course, if the minimum level is very low, of course, the rise will be slower, and the time in which the system, all the system will be restored will occur at later time. So as you see, many of the properties of this degradation curve depends on the way in which we have done in ordinary time activity, which could reduce as much as possible this area. So this is so during ordinary times, we can observe and monitor the events, predict perturbation, their extent, their potential impact on places, asset, and of course on the people, on the citizen life. We can alert operator and emergency manager that something is going to occur, provide information to perform preparedness action, particularly in the case of technological system. Of course, we could do some preparatory action imagine in an electrical system when you are predicting the occurrence of some damage of some apparatus, some equipments, elements, some part of the network. Of course, you can manage and operate the network in a way to reduce as much as possible the impact of the area in which the damage will occur on the rest of the network. So even more importantly is to share information to all emergency players, so to deploy action which are driven by a coherent knowledge of the scenario. You see, particularly in the realm of critical infrastructure, in which you have many different players which act on different services. Each of these operators has a strong knowledge of its own system, but ignores almost everything concerning the fate and eventual problems or perturbation which may arrive from other perturbations, so other systems. So it is important that all the the same situational awareness of the scenario, okay? And then this is the prerequisite for allowing them to adopt measure we can achieve a global optimum rather than a single asset optimum, because it's what is happening today. You know, each operator having a complete knowledge of its infrastructure are mostly related to the minimization, to the optimization of the situation of its asset without knowing what is going to what is happening for other systems to which they are even somehow strongly related. Okay, so we have casted all this information and all this strategy in our decision support system, which a very complex technological system, but which is done by the following tasks. You know, first of all, it's a system which collects a large number of information from the environment for having the possibility of understanding which is going to happen. So weather forecast, nowcasting, we are in contact with the earthquake observatory in Italy, so we are informed straight after the occurrence of an earthquake, which is the magnitude, the localization, the depth, etc. So there is a gathering of all possible information from the field, also from field sensing, from ground sensing data, in a way that we can have an assessment, make a reliable prediction of what is going to happen in terms of a natural event in the different areas. Then, of course, we try to predict, because we have also a large number of data containing the position, the dislocation of all the infrastructure. Imagine in a large area. So electrical system, telecommunication system, water pipeline, etc. So everything which can be hit and damaged by the predicted infrastructure are in our very large database. So we map the prediction, the event predicted with the position, the exact positioning of all the infrastructure, and so we can estimate a sort of a probability that this system may be hit and damaged by the predicted event. Then already at this time we can provide a sort of a trigger, an alert to the operators, telling them, look, you're going to lose this element because there will be a flood or a thunderstorm or whatever. I mean, it may happen. In several cases, and we are also attempting to provide some more in-depth estimate of the crisis which is going to happen, because we are modeling the infrastructures which are in that specific area, and we try to understand which is the fate of the service that they are providing. Okay, so we provide to the operator not only the identification of elements which might be hit, but also which is the ultimate result of the loss of certain critical infrastructure element in the delivery of the service. All this is based on a very large information database, which have been obtained by gathering in a unique database a lot of information, also territorial vulnerability, etc., which are normally spread in many different public databases. So in this way, we have a huge repository, which probably more than 500 different information layers, containing, of course, also the layers of the dislocation of the critical infrastructure, on which, of course, all this system is based, because you have the possibility of correlating a very large number of data when, of course, you deal with this analysis. So I'm just showing something, some view of this database, which has a WebGIS interface with the user. So a user can access by a normal web browser this interface with this credential, and of course have access to a very large number of data set and information, which are either static or dynamics, in terms that, of course, each constantly, after having made this prediction on 12 hours, scenario expected in 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, of course, this is a sort of a dynamically updated information system. So, for instance, here is a graph of a very relevant gas pipeline in an area in Italy, and of course here you can see in the same overlay a number of vulnerability point. Here, for instance, is the hydraulic risk of the area. There is a river, and these are areas which are submitted, frequently submitted to flooding. Here there are other type of risk. These are landslide in the area. There are faults, seismogenetic sources, and so on. Okay, here, for instance, is the what we have in the area of the city of Rome, which has been the center of our experimentation. So these are all the electrical distribution network of the area, with more than 15,000 elements. So there is also a map inside of the electrical, the element of the electrical transmission network, of the gas transmission network. You see here, this is a map of the city. In here, you have the exact dislocation of all the elements of the infrastructure. Here is a zoom with the transmission electrical system in the area with all the lines and the active element. Okay, this is the gas pipeline, the transmission gas pipeline in Italy. And here is the result of a simulation of blackout, which could occur in the city of Rome if a flooding of a given relevance would occur in this area. Here there is the Tevere River, and you see here, and so in case of a specific type of flooding, you will have a flood in an area, and so this is the extension of the expected blackout. Okay, so this is still images of our WebGIS interface. This is a passage of a perturbation. Here is a nowcasting estimate. Here, okay, the colors depends on the quantity of the expected quantity of rainfall. Here is the result of our hydraulic risk. So all the river in this area have an hydraulic model, and so according to the expected weather condition, the hydraulic model is updated. And of course, if there is some prediction of some flooding in some area, this system is able to signal it and to alert it. Other than getting this data, we also rely on remote sensing data. So this is a map of a part of the city of Rome, a change detection map in the last, say, 3 years. So the different colors depend on the movement of the terrain. This is the scale here. These are millimeters. So you see that you can also perceive with this constant analysis of this data, which are the area, of course, which undergo a slow movement of the terrain. This is, of course, is very important for some type of asset like pipelines or other type which are strongly vulnerable from the terrain movement. Okay, here is for the earthquake. In Italy, you say it's a very problematic area for the earthquake. These are all in our database of sources. Here is a map that we have built up on the vulnerability of buildings at the level of census area. So this is the central area. This is the area of Rome, as you see here. So it's a very detailed geographical information concerning the seismic vulnerability of elements of the Mediterranean. We have a simulator of earthquake. So this is the simulation of the damage expected by an earthquake in the area, in an area of central Italy, which is not too far from Rome. It's an Apennine area in which we had this very strong earthquake in 1915. So we have reproduced the similar shake such as that occurred at the time, to see which would be the fate of the assets, and of course also for the building, if of course this earthquake would occur today. This is another simulation that we did. These are two motorways, very important, which cross the Apennines, and they cross a very seismic active region in the area of L'Aquila, in which we had a very strong earthquake in 2009. You see here, with having all this data concerning the dislocation of the different artworks in the motorway, we can either have a rapid assessment of the potential damage on this infrastructure soon after say 3 or 4 minutes of the shock, or even, and this is one of the major relevance of our system, of course we can do scenario simulation. So in this time we are simulating different kind of earthquake which could occur in this area, to see which would be effective the consequences to the area, and of course to this network system. We did a similar simulation in the area of the city of Florence, which is slightly seismic also, because it has a seismic area not far from it. And so we have simulated several type of shocks similar to those which occur in 18th century, to see, of course, which would be the consequences today. Okay, so we have set up this decision support system. So the idea, we have started to deploy its services in Italy. And to do this, we have produced a joint agreement with the National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, which is another, that is the research institute in Italy, which is committed to the geophysical science. And this institute managed the Italian Observatory for Earthquakes. So it's a control room which detects through a national-wide network of instruments, detect the location of and the characteristic of each earthquake as soon as it occurs. And so the idea is to create a sort of a legal entity, as a public legal entity, which can be boosted by all this technology that we have realized. And of course, these services, which can be deployed to the set of national infrastructure operators, and also to the organisms of the public administration which are committed to emergency management. And this is particularly the civil protection in its local declination, because we have a national, a regional, and a local civil protection system. The idea is, of course, to expand and to create this ASAC center. This ASAC is European Infrastructure Simulation and Analysis Center. The name mimics that of NISAC, the United States NISAC, which is the National Infrastructure Simulation and Analysis Center. So the idea is to create a replicate of this endeavor in the different nations. All this competence center can be boosted by similar equipment, and of course can provide a work, this service at the national scale, and of course can be also able to collaborate in case of large transnational crisis like the one that happened in 2003 and occurred in the whole Europe. So this is all. This is my coordinates at ASAC and at TIEMS. Thanks a lot for the attention, and open to the questions.
Thank you for this great presentation again. Yes, it's time for questions for all the speakers we had now. So the audience, would you please raise your question if you want?
Yeah, if I may jump in, Jill,
Yeah.
It's really fantastic. It's a really comprehensive platform. But I'm interested in the trickiest natural hazards, which are earthquakes, of course. And do you, let's say, dare to have a short-term predictions of earthquakes?
Not prediction at the moment. We do not make prediction. The link, we have this link. So after say normally after 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes from the control room of the National Earthquake Observatory, they provide us the data of the earthquake. Okay, so just localization, the magnitude, the depth, etc. For other things, we use scenario simulation. Okay, yeah. So in good times, we try to analyze the different regions which may be hit, and we try to make a sort of an educated type of simulation by simulating different type of events. Because as you saw before, we have a lot, we have a lot of different seismogenetic sources. So, I mean, from each of those can originate some shock, okay? So we need to make simulation of possible shocks coming from this or that or this one, and then we sort of, we make a sort of a pile up of the consequences, you know?
By part, yeah, for sure. You have certain magnitudes, and then you try to figure out what will happen if this happens.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yes. But you can do the predictions for flooding, for example, if
the prediction of flooding, yes, yes,
yes, yeah. For
yes, because we
except earthquakes, of course. Yeah, this is the trickiest thing.
Yeah.
And do you have all this level of very detailed data for whole Italy at the moment, to just
for the critical infrastructure, for the transmission system? Yes, we have all the data concerning electrical, gas transmission, etc. At the local scale, the electrical distribution system, the local telecommunication system, etc. Just in the area of Rome, which is, however, quite large area. But of course, now we have everything. As soon as we get the graph and the topology of the electrical distribution network of whatever city in Italy or even outside Italy, of course, we can reproduce with our blackout simulation model provide this type of information. So what would happen if one or more elements of your network would fail for some reason, which may be an anthropic reason or a natural related to the occurrence of some natural hazard. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will, if you can go to your last slide with this cooperation. So where it is at the moment? Yeah.
We are here. ASAC-DE is going to slowly set up, and we have contact to reproduce our ASAC.IT in Romania. So we have a strong contact with Romania, but of course we are open to to be contacted by other nation, other institution of other nation, because here there should be some say hopefully public institute of a country would that of course wants to reproduce this system in its own country. And of course we are also available to provide all the technology which is needed, because I mean
we lost
on Italian data, but of course if you take out the Italian data and you put inside some other nation data, of course you will have the same system running on there. Please, Chertsak, I saw you open, you raised the hand.
Thank you very much for your very excellent presentation. I'm thinking, because I'm from the part of the mitigation preparedness response, I'm trying to see how useful the simulation analysis can be made. I think this is very good, and the connectivity from your result to the, let's say, civil defense or any organization that will make use of your analysis in order to educate people, be able to exercise, and in case of emergency, be able to save lives and property in an effective way. And I'm also thinking about here where I stay in Dhaka. I talk about Chittagong, but also Dhaka, 20 million people, and 5-6 years ago, the EMI have carried out the analysis like you carry out the risk analysis, but there is no connectivity. So the government did not take this risk analysis into mitigation, preparedness, and response. And if something happened, it will be something that we have to be concerned, because so I'd like to hear from you how you make connectivity with mitigation, preparedness, and response in Italy. Thank you.
In this particular case, we are make a validation test in the area of Rome. So we are connected with the local electrical distribution operator and with the large urban area of Rome civil protection. So they are connected to this web system, which is constantly updating the type of information that is providing to the people. And now, for instance, in this case, we are preparing a system for with which we will provide a service to the operator of these two infrastructure, the two motorways. These are two motorways. This is here there is Rome, and the two motorways goes on the East Italian coast, crossing the Apennines, which is the most seismogenetic part of Italy. Okay, and so they want to know, of course, as soon as possible, which is eventual damage which occur to their infrastructure if some earthquake would occur. And even more importantly, they have to know from this very fast assessment of the damages, which are the places in which they can reroute the traffic, because of course they should close the motorway as soon as possible for avoiding, problems, etc. But of course they have to reroute the traffic of the vehicles somewhere. So here, of course, it's not shown in the picture. We can also see which is the fate of the different roads which are close to the motorway, and the different cities, if there are damage and so on, in a way to be able to provide them an indication on which is the best route to divert the traffic, you know, to send the people, because of course you don't want that they go in places in which, of course, there is a very strong damage, or they can have repercussion, and they are in danger.
Vittorio,
okay,
we have to answer to a question, or maybe two questions that are in the chart. And would you please also, for all the participants, would you please fill the form, fill the poll in order to share the results before the end of the session? So the first question is coming from Prasad Bandari. He asks for nice articulation of resilience. You said before areas, there should be a strategy for preparedness, reduces the area. Agreed. Just wondering what constitutes preparedness. Doesn't it include risk reduction activities, or only the preparedness for post-disaster response?
Yes, in some cases, I told you when at the end we can provide an information concerning okay, here, after having identified the type of blackout, we can also provide the operator the best possible strategy to return to the equilibrium position, to the equilibrium situation, in the way that their impact metric is as low as possible. Okay, so the dramaticity of a blackout crisis is estimated via a certain metric, which is known to the electrical operator. Okay, so our system, our simulator is able to try to all possible sequences of restoration, and select that which provide the final estimate of the dramaticity of the event, the minimum. Okay, so other than providing preparedness action, because of course knowing that something is going to happen in the area, the operator can manage and operate the network in a way that it is more robust, for instance, in a specific area. But then after, of course, the event occurred and something has occurred, we provide them the best possible way to restore the system. So we do produce indication, and either before and after, you know, for but this is a very specific case. In other case, of course, we do provide alert because our environmental system is multi-hazard, in the sense that we try to get a prediction of everything is going to happen, not only say for weather forecast, but also related flooding, because we receive data from a third party, from an hydraulic company, which has hydraulic simulator for all the major water basin in the center of Italy. So this, yeah.
Vittorio, there is a second question. There is a question from Christine Piguet. She asks, yeah, what about the education of the population that are exposed or vulnerable to these type of risks?
Yes, for instance, here the colors depends on the number of users which will be in blackout times the time, the number of minutes or hours of their blackout. So of course we may have in our database we have also economic and social data. For instance, in the case of an earthquake, having access for each census area, which is the population or at least the population density which is included in that area, and knowing which will be the damage expected by a specific earthquake, we can also estimate the number of, so I will show you, there was the earthquake simulation. Okay, here, this is, the color is the damage degree, the damage degree expected in specific area. You see here that the earthquake, the epicenter is more or less here. Here is just countryside. Fortunately, so the color is green. That means very low damage. But of course, in this area, which is a small city here, of course you may have a D4, which is a strong damage. So we do also have the population, which is in that specific area. So we can estimate on the basis of this damage, which is the number of casualties which one may expect, and which is the number of people that should be evacuated. So they cannot be there anymore. So also we can also integrate not only technological data, but also social, industrial data, because of course you can also from here we have, for instance, the distribution of industry of plants or whatever. So we can also say after a shock like this, attempt to make a first estimate on the type of damage, of economic damage, which would be associated to the event. And other than looking at the building, we look at roads, and we look at the other infrastructure in order to provide the civil protection a clear assessment of what is the situation that they will face when, of course, we'll go in that area, because if there is no water, or you may have some explosion of gas pipelines, or lack of electricity, and so on. So this, of course, will yeah.
There is another question, then maybe the last one. Do private telecom operators have the obligation to put themselves at the service of the crisis management at state level?
Normally, the telecommunication operator sit at the emergency management room at the level of civil protection when there is a national relevant problem, okay, event. At the local scale, situation is not that simple, because of course the civil protection depends. It's a direct office of the Prime Minister cabinet, okay? So it has a very strong power. Local civil protection in Italy depends on the major. So of course, it's a very lower power in its hand, you know, to commit telecommunication operators. So this is a way, for instance, in our case, we have with, of course, the compliance of the telecommunication operator, have the map of all the antenna for the aerial communication, the mobile communication in the city, because they are very important for the telecontrolling of the electrical distribution network. So in this case, we have already in this system the data concerning the most important critical infrastructure operator of the city. So of course they will be needed, and all the scenario that the system is able to provide is provide coherently either to the electrical, to the telecommunication, to the gas operator, and so on, in a way that all these guys will have the same appreciation of the scenario, okay? Because as I told before, it's important that all people, all emergency managers should have in their hand the same visualization of the crisis, because otherwise they will fight against different scenarios, you know.
So it's time to thank all the participants, all the key speakers. I don't want to put the name again. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my friend Harald that managed all this last session on this Friday. I would like to thank also Jean-Paul that technically manage a lot of things. I would like to also to thank the technical organization, Resilience France, for their professionalism also. And it's time to say thank you again. Do you have any additional information? Harald or Snezana, do you want to add something?
Just saying that have a good lunch, and we meet again 2 o'clock for the last session, which look at more economical aspects, and we have a conclusion at the end today. It's good to follow, very interesting discussion. Thank you, have a good lunch.